welcome to a new episode of the Evolving Business Minds podcast. Today's guest is a renowned American entrepreneur who was named top 100 most influential people from the year 2000 to 2012. He founded and grew two of the largest retail chains in North America, one of them being Liberty Tax Service with over 6,000 offices. He went on to sell his interest in Liberty Tax Service for nearly $500 million. He is the Hewitt and Jackson Hewitt Tax Service. I want to welcome John Hewitt to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, John. It's a pleasure to have you on here. If you don't mind, can you take a minute to tell everyone listening kind of an overview of what you're currently doing with Liberty or with loyalty brands and how they can connect with your company?
Sure. As you said, I founded two of the top 100 retail chains in the company. They were both public companies worth $500 million. And now I have started another company called Loyalty Brands. We have 8 different franchise systems, and so in 7 different industries. So the way to contact me or the company is loyaltybrands.com. If you'd like a free copy of my book, you can send me an email with your address at john@loyaltybrands.com.
Perfect. And I'll make sure we link all that in the show notes so people can just click and get right to it.
Super.
So, John, I want to go back to the beginning. How did you get your start in the tax preparation business?
Well, my beginning is long, long before you were thought of.
Yeah.
It was 1969. My dad was CFO of a public company. He wanted to be an entrepreneur, but he had 5 children too quickly, very quickly, not too quickly, and could never afford to until I was in college. And he called H&R Block and tried to buy a franchise in the suburb of Buffalo where we lived. And they said, we're going to open a company store there anyway. Why don't you have your son take our course? Maybe he could work for us. So I took the H&R Block tax course, loved it while I was at the University of Buffalo. And I found out I'm blessed. I found out what I wanted to be when I grew up. And so 12 years later, I was running 250 H&R Block offices. So, and my dad was still CFO of a public company, still wanted to found his own company. And he bought one of the first apples by mail long before there was an Apple store.
Mm-hmm.
There weren't even 500,000 apples in the country. And he decided we should computerize taxes. So in 1981, we both quit our jobs and built the first tax software for an Apple computer. Way ahead of its time, no one wanted it. Got blessed, found a company in Virginia Beach. Biggest blessing is the weather here is so much nicer than Buffalo.
Yeah.
Moved my family here in August of '82. Been here ever since. We merged the computer company with Mel Jackson. We bought 6 offices from his widow. They were all here in Virginia Beach. And we merged the 2 companies, changed the name to Jackson Hewitt, went public, and 15 years later, sold it for $483 million. So that's my start in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s.
Now, you said your dad created the program, or did you both worked on the program?
I did all the work. He was CEO, but I did the software.
And did you have a background in that before? Or did you just?
I had none, but with the Apple, it was so easy. I wrote it in BASIC, and BASIC is so easy. It reminds me of geometry. Mm-hmm. It's very logical and very simple to use. So I just learned enough to write the program.
Okay. That's awesome though. And that really changed the direction of how people do their taxes now, correct?
No. Exactly. H&R Block lacked so much vision. I tried to sell it to them, and they said, and they announced in their annual report, they're a Fortune 500 company. Mm-hmm. And they said, people ask us why we don't computerize it. We say, we tried it. Customers don't care. Doesn't save us any money. We're never going to computerize. So that's how visionary H&R Block was in 1983. And fortunately, I computerized my firm, and we were at the forefront of the startup of electronic filing in the late 1980s.
You know, that story about H&R Block kind of reminds me of the whole Blockbuster story. Blockbuster and Netflix. Blockbuster didn't want to adapt, And they were actually, Netflix tried to get Blockbuster to buy them out at some point for some very small number, and they just didn't see the future like Netflix did. And now look at where they're at. H&R Block's still around, but I'm sure they took a lot longer to compete with everyone else with that mindset. Hey everyone, I have a quick interruption from the show, but I'll make it brief. I've got something that I think is vital for every entrepreneur out there, and it can be a game changer for your business. Navigating the business world demands more than just passion, it requires crystal clear financial insight. That's where our company, Olive Branch Bookkeeping Inc., comes in, offering not just book cleanups for those behind on taxes, but also comprehensive monthly bookkeeping, payroll management, corporate structuring, and the key to informed decisions, detailed profit and loss reports. Imagine this, your financial records spotless and strategic, paving the way for growth without the headache of untangling years of bookkeeping yourself. With Olive Branch, you're equipped with financial clarity to steer your business forward. So if the thought of sorting out your finances feels overwhelming, let Olive Branch Bookkeeping lighten the load. They're more than just bookkeepers, they're your financial clarity partners. If you'd like to see how our team can help you and your business, I'll include a booking link and contact information in the show notes so you can schedule a free discovery call.
Not sure how much you know about IBM and Apple, but IBM, not Apple, but Microsoft.
Mm-hmm.
Microsoft was owned by IBM, and they spun it off for like $4 million or something. Bill Gates. So now, of course, Microsoft is 5 times bigger than IBM.
Yeah. You actually don't even hear about IBM very often.
Right.
So, it kind of sounds like you fell into the tax preparation business. Was it something that you immediately felt like you were passionate about, or was it something that developed over time after running the business and being involved with it?
No, I was in school,
Mm-hmm.
like most college students, I think, the most that I've talked to, didn't know what I wanted to be, and I was in school to be a mathematician. Now, even today, I don't know what a mathematician would do.
Yeah.
I certainly no job that I would want.
Mm-hmm.
And so the minute I took the course, I just loved everything about it. I loved I loved the fact that it involved multiplication, division. I'm great at math, great at adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing.
Yeah.
And back then, not only did they not have computers, they didn't even have calculators when I started. So it came in handy. Secondly, it's a gray area tax, and so you get to argue and negotiate and do what's right for people. And thirdly, it's helping people, believe it or not. And I don't think most people, if you've never been in the tax industry, this doesn't occur to you.
Mm-hmm.
But I think most people, one of the biggest fears is going to the dentist, and the second is going to the tax preparer.
Mm-hmm.
So most people are afraid of it, don't like it, afraid of the IRS, and so it helped people. So for those 3 reasons, I was instantly in love with the tax business.
Yeah. So my wife and I own a bookkeeping firm. She was really geeking out that I was going to have you on here today, because she actually had a deeper understanding of your background than I did when I first connected with you. But it's something that we focus on is just helping. We're like the precursor to the tax guy, right? So that they can be more prepared through the year. And our whole goal is to help people understand their finances so they can make better and more confident decisions. And it's amazing how many people just leave it to the last minute. And that stress through the year, I think, really stunts people's growth and not understanding where their business is headed until it's too late and you already have the tax bill due.
Well, you're right. It's most Americans are. It's un-American to not procrastinate. You must procrastinate, right? If you have something complicated, you must procrastinate.
Yeah.
And it really can be costly in the tax world. There's planning ahead can save you thousands of dollars, change your life. And so every time some major event happens, you get married, you get divorced, you have a child, you buy a business, you buy a rental property, you have a capital gain, you cash in a capital gain. You should talk to your tax advisor before the event. After the end of the year, all you can do is keep score, but you can change the outcome if you plan in advance.
Yeah. So I'm curious, what were some of the hardest challenges you faced in the early stages of growing your company?
There's massive challenge and I'm in the third chaotic, huge growth company. And
Right now?
yes, with loyalty brands, but one of my brands is going like crazy. It's mobile grooming. It's called
Hmm.
Zoom and Grooming. It's a mobile pet grooming because we do both dogs and some cats. But yeah, um, exponential growth is chaotic. So you face all kinds of difficulties, and some of the difficulties are people that can be leaders when you have 5 or 10 or 30 offices. You need, by the time you get 500 offices, you need different skill sets. You need different leaders.
Yeah.
And then you get to 5,000 offices and you need, again, different leaders and skill set. Very few people can transition to be a leader, like a chief marketing officer or chief technical officer or information officer or financial officer. Very few people can make that transition. So one is there's turnover, and yet you don't want turnover. You want loyalty, and you want experience and so forth. So that's a difficulty. It's the biggest difficulty, Andy, is that when you grow from zero to, like Jackson Hewitt has 6,000 offices. When you grow from zero to 6,000 offices and a few 100,000 of revenue to 500 million of revenue,
Hmm.
you have to manage two things. You have to manage the income and the expenses, the structure. And you can't have too much structure or you go bankrupt. And you can't have too much income without structure, or you collapse for lack of service for quality.
Yeah.
So you have to manage those. And so at the beginning, I had 2 employees, and at the end, I had 500.
Right.
So, and I couldn't have 500 employees at the beginning, right? We would have
Hmm.
collapsed for bankruptcy. I couldn't have two at the end. We would have had no support. So
Yeah.
you have to manage your resources with your income, and that's the most difficult part of growing. But you also make mistakes. In my book, I think that the most surprising thing about my book is so many people. The number one comment about my book is, "Wow, you admit your mistakes." So I talk about mistakes I made and the way that I overcame them.
Yeah.
And I think I didn't realize that when I wrote it, but in thinking about it, in all the business books I read, they all talk about their successes. They very seldom talk about their errors. And what I've learned in business is, and in life, the people that are the most successful have made the most mistakes. So there's no way to skate through life without mistakes.
Yeah.
The key is everyone faces adversity. The key is the winners always get up, and the losers at some point, whether it's the first adversity or fifth or 10th, they stay down. And so that's the difference between winning and losing is perseverance.
Well, and I think taking the mistakes you had and then learning from them, viewing them as learning lessons so that you don't continue to make the same mistakes over and over, so you can actually grow.
That's horrible. I mean, you have to be an idiot to make the same mistakes over and over. And I think it
Yeah.
wasn't it Einstein that said, if you keep doing what you always did and expect different results,
Yeah.
that's the definition of insanity.
Yes. I want to touch on something you mentioned about exponential growth, because I don't think people, I've had the pleasure of meeting with a lot of business owners on here. I have a lot of people I've worked with that are own businesses, and a lot of people operate from a place of incremental increases and not exponential. And, incremental, if you're looking at a long enough time horizon, it's inevitable if you make the right choices and just slowly grow, it's going to grow. What was the difference for you going from, you're not in incremental increases, you're having exponential increases in your business and growing that rapidly? And how did you, how do I ask this? How did you adapt yourself to those situations so that you didn't make slower growth? Does that make sense?
Yes, yes, that's a lot of questions, but I think I got them.
Yeah. Okay.
So let me say that when I built the software
Yeah.
and I tried to sell it to H&R Block and they said they didn't want it. I said, well, we're going to build a, we're going to build a company bigger than they are. How stupid of them not to understand that computers are the future,
Hmm.
right? They just didn't get it. So I said, we're going to build. So when we bought Mel Jackson Tax Service, they had 6 locations. H&R Block had 9,000. So I mean, a normal person might say, well, we'll double in 3 years. We'll double again in 5 years. We'll double again in 7 years. But my goal from the minute I went out to raise money to buy Mel Jackson and to merge with our computer company is we're going to be bigger than H&R Block. We're going to add 8,995 offices and have 9,001 locations. We're going to be bigger than H&R Block. So I think that it's if you're going to achieve greatness, you can't have mundane goals.
Hmm.
And that's a big, hairy, audacious, crazy goal, right? I
Yeah.
mean, the chances of growing to 9,001 offices when you is almost zero. Well, we never got there. We got to 6,000. So, but that's pretty good. The good news
It's really
is
good.
if you try for 9,000, I mean, today Jackson Hewitt is a $1 billion company, the 23rd largest retail franchise chain in the country. That's not so bad.
Yeah.
But Andy, if I'd only tried for 50 or 100,
Yeah.
then I might have been happy with 50 or 100, not 6,000. If you're going to get to 6,000, you got to go for 9 or 10,000. So I believe very, very vehemently that if you're talented and or blessed the way that I am, you have to set big, hairy, audacious goals. And of course, there's a book about that,
Hmm.
setting big, hairy, audacious goals. You always should set your goals higher than ordinary.
Yeah. You know, I think I've fallen victim to this where I have big goals, and I'm sure there's other people that can relate to me, have very large goals. But what was the difference for you from having a goal and actually achieving it? Like, did you already have the plan mapped out, or is it just something you figured out along the way?
No, the plan changed dramatically over the years. Um, and I made lots of mistakes. So here's one of the biggest mistakes I ever made in my career.
Hmm.
Right, I started Mel Jackson, and I bought 6 locations.
Yeah.
By January, I had 11. By the following January, I had 15, and by the third January, I had 22.
Hmm.
So I'd gone from 6 to 22 in 2.5 years. Now that's pretty good growth by, I think 98% of people be happy with that, right?
Yeah.
Go from 6 to 22. But I looked up at my goal of 9,000 and said, wait a minute, I'm going to be like 1,000 years old before we get there.
Right.
We got to do something different. So I hadn't franchised yet. And one of the biggest mistakes I made in my career is not franchising immediately.
Hmm.
I waited 3 years to franchise. And then we grew exponentially. We went from 22 to 49 to 200 to 300 to 500. I mean, we grew exponentially. I didn't franchise. Now I was so dumb. H&R Block was, when I started, was 95% franchise. They grew out by franchising. And here it was all in front of me. I supported franchises. I knew franchising.
Yeah.
I loved franchising, but I didn't use that tool. And so we changed all the way along. We changed mistakes that were holding me back because I was doing the same old, instead of novel, modern, thoughtful, um, copying others. You know, I in my life I have about, I believe, about 30 novel theories,
Hmm.
and but I have 10,000 theories. I've stolen 9,700 of them, right? So most are right, 9,900 of them. So I steal most of what has helped me, but sometimes I just miss the obvious,
Hmm.
and that was a dumb mistake The minute I started Liberty Tax, the very day we started franchise. So I didn't make that same mistake that I made at Jackson Hewitt. The
Yeah.
minute I started Loyalty Brands, we started franchising. So yeah, you have to learn. You have to learn from your mistakes, and so you have to adjust your behavior. I've never made a 5-year plan, even a 3-year plan, and sometimes not even a 1-year plan that I didn't have to adjust on the fly. I've never rolled out a new philosophy or a new procedure or a new strategy that didn't have to be modified. You know,
Yeah.
we sit in a room, all of us experts, and say, this is our strategy. This is what we're going to do. And we never get it 100% right.
Yeah.
So you have to understand that you have to be flexible. You have to learn on the fly. You have to improve on the fly. You're not going to be able to predict all the reactions of whatever you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, I'm curious, is there a framework you use to make sure that the reactions and the decisions uh, when you're adapting to new things coming up, did you have a framework that stayed aligned with your end goal? And I guess the reason I'm asking this question, I think a lot of times people can get into business and then they make changes and they veer off the path that towards the goal that they want, and it actually deters them from the success that they're looking for. So how did you make sure that those decisions and those adaptations aligned with your long-term goal?
In a couple of ways. Number one is we never waited to. So let's say we had a goal. I mean, in the tax season, it's like farming, right?
Hmm.
You plant in May to January, and then you harvest in January through April, right?
Yes. Yep.
So we never waited till April 15th to assess the reaction, right?
Hmm.
So we're on top of it. We're taking the pulse of it from day one. So, for example, one of the fights I had with my chief marketing officer, who was with me for 35 years, she's still with me. But somehow, when we used to be on TV a lot, and we were on a national TV channel when there was only four, and
Yeah.
the fourth one was whatever it was, the Chicago one from CBS or Ted Turner or whatever.
Okay.
So it would, and so one time she came out with this horrible ad. I thought that the new TV ads were horrible, and she had to change it every year. And I said, why do you have to change it every year? But she had to change it every year. And she came out, they were horrible. So we did it. So I said, I think they're horrible. So here's what we're going to do a test. On January 14th, we're going to buy Oprah Winfrey, same time slot at 3:30 on Tuesday and 3:30 on Wednesday. We're going to run last year's ad and this year's ad. We're going to put an 800 number in to
Yeah.
call, right? And then we're going to test it. And we're going to see which gets more calls. And you can pick whichever day. You can go Tuesday, and we can do last year. Or she picked to go first. We got one call. It was the wrong number.
Hmm.
And I went second and 18 calls. I said, get rid of the new ads and go back to last year's ads, right? So you don't wait until April 15th to
Right.
test your theory. It's too late. So one part is you assess very early, and within 5 or 10% of the time you've started, you take an assessment and then reconsider.
Okay.
Then you make a decision. But then secondly is you need to listen to all of your constituents. You need to listen to in my case, it was franchisees, tax preparers, employees. As a CEO, you have to have your ear to the ground. No one wants to give CEOs bad information, or I'm sorry, negative information. No
Hmm.
one ever wants to come into a CEO's office and say, I failed or we're failing. So you really have to be attuned. You have to go seek information. You have to
Yeah.
go ask questions, because they're going to hide bad news for a while.
Until it's too
So,
late.
so the second part of it is seek out criticism, seek out and ask and listen.
Okay. Yeah, that's great advice. So this one may sound like a pretty basic question, but I'm curious. obviously you had such a successful business, but what did a typical day look like for you when you were running your company and it was growing rapidly? Was it just constant all the time? Did you have structure to your day?
No, it's when you're growing exponentially, and you have an open door policy. It's
Hmm.
a revolving door. It's a revolving door. You have employee problems, you have customer problems, you have IRS problems, you have competitor problems, you have, and when you have franchisees, for the good, I don't know if you've been in franchising or spent too much time in franchising, but
No.
franchisees aren't employees. Employees usually have trouble speaking up
Hmm.
and complaining to a superior, and they like chain of command, right?
Hmm.
I mean, they some people, they just love the phrase chain of command. So if there's like three people down from me, it never gets to me, right? They go
Yeah.
up the chain of command. And so, but franchisees, they hate chain of command. I want to talk to the CEO. I got a problem.
Yeah.
And yeah, you have to be, and what the key thing is looking for systemic problems, right? That when one franchisee calls up and says, I have a problem, okay, you have to make a decision. Our We had 2,000 franchisees.
Hmm.
Are dozens or hundreds going to have the same problem, or is this unique to this guy? If hundreds or dozens or hundreds are going to have a problem, you need to quickly create a system or a communication to solve it in advance, so you don't get hundreds of phone calls, the same kind of phone call.
Right.
So you have to, I call it again, that's tip of the iceberg theory. You have to realize for every issue, is it a tip of the iceberg? Is it going to happen 100 more times? Or it's like a nuclear war. It's a one-off situation that's either, I mean, it's just not a non-event, or it's going to only happen once, right? An alligator jumped off and ran into an office and bit someone, right? I mean, you don't need to create a system to solve that,
Yeah.
right? But you have to, as a great CEO, you have to learn to to um, to preempt problems,
Hmm.
and react. And the easiest way to do that is to react quickly when you're presented with a complaint, and make that decisive decision. Okay, yes, this is going to happen to many others. Let's get on it right away, solve it, and then disseminate the information to every employee, everyone on tech support, everyone, every franchisee, to disseminate it, to diffuse the situation before it becomes a nightmare.
And obviously you had a large team around you, so you probably go to the heads of those departments and get everyone together, right? Did you ever
Yeah, exactly.
miscategorize? Did you ever
It,
miscategorize something that you maybe thought it was going to be a isolated incident and became a bigger problem that you didn't foresee?
um, they screwed up more than I did. They would argue with me sometimes, but yeah, I mean, I'm I'm very cocky, very self-confident. But if I don't make a mistake every minute, I make a mistake every 5 minutes.
Yeah.
So I make lots of mistakes,
Yeah.
right? But I didn't get to where I was founding 10,000 locations without solving solving issues and solving problems. I made mistakes, but I overcame them.
Yeah. So I read an article on Inc.com where you had commented that your billion-dollar mistake was not setting up Jackson Hewitt from the beginning in a way that you could control it without interference from venture capitalists and or outside forces. Can you give us a little backstory on this, and what are your thoughts on partnerships in business?
So let me say this, that in all of my companies, um, I've taken venture capital,
Hmm.
and and the problem with venture capital is, or the good thing is, when you start, they have a 5 year horizon where they typically want to be out in 5 years. So when you start the first year, you're both thinking long term,
Hmm.
right? And I'm almost always producing, right, and always getting results. So we're aligned for a few years, and then about the third year, or fourth year, they're getting ready to exit. And so they don't want to think about 5 years. I'm always thinking 5 or 10 years from
Right.
now. As an entrepreneur, as a CEO, you're supposed to have vision and think about the long term. But as we get towards that fifth year or whatever they want to cash out, 5, 6, 7 years, they start thinking about no, no, no. We don't want to invest money today that will hurt today's profit for the future.
Mm-hmm.
Just because that's going to help the future, that's the right thing. That's going to hurt the bottom line. And when I sell my shares next year, then I'm not going to get as good a price because the current profits aren't as big as they could have been if they want to run the company like, let's say I take money in 1990. They
Mm-hmm.
want to run the company as if it's going to cease to exist in 1995. Now, it's so long comes 1994, and I'm thinking 2000, 2005, and they're thinking, no, no, I don't really care. I'm out. So venture capital is a nuisance after a few years because they're looking for their exit strategy. I'm always thinking long term. So I'm not a fan of venture capital. I've taken it each and every time. It's a nuisance because as they mature in the investment,
Yeah.
they stop the partnership mentality that you had from day one.
And this is maybe sound ignorant on my part. I just don't understand. I've never been involved with venture capitalists, but is there a board that you have to speak to get permission? Like if you're trying to make changes for the long term, uh, what kind of friction happens in there? They may not like it, but can you still make the decision that's beneficial for the long term of your company, or do you have to make those shorter term decisions to please the venture capitalist?
The CEOs always report to a board,
Mm-hmm.
right? So um, the board of directors, and typically the venture capital is on the board, and they typically they're only a minority of the board. But if they struggle, sometimes they can convince others in the board to switch to their side.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had in my career at both of my companies. So at Jackson Hewitt, I was with Jackson Hewitt for 15 years. And for 14 years, every decision's unanimous. I didn't take venture capital until the 12th year.
Okay.
But so everything was unanimous for 14 years. And then the venture capitalist rebelled and he got enough board members to screw me out of my company. So 15 years later, I left the company.
Mm-hmm.
So, but we sold it for $483 million that year.
Yeah.
So, I mean, so that was pretty good. I mean, it was a good run. I still had a percentage of the company, but so the second time it was 20 years. So for the first 18 years, we had 100% unanimous decisions, and then the 19th year, the venture capital guy raised his hand and fought, and so we had another fight. So so both times in 35 years of public, and about a third of those where both companies were public at the end, I had unanimous decisions.
Mm-hmm.
And then the venture capitalists rebelled and caused consternation problems. And so so they can cause problems but the second time I had learned from the first time, I had controlling stock, and I got to pick one more director than all the shareholders. So I could have picked you, Andy, to be on my board. So I got to win all the votes. Now it's a public company, and you get eviscerated in the press for doing that.
Yeah.
But I got to pick so that they did not have controlling interest in that. What had happened the first time didn't happen the second time, but they still caused a ruckus and a problem. So yes, board of directors are, especially in a public company, since Sarbanes-Oxley, over the last 22 or 23 years, it's been it's been a nuisance to, I mean, we were spending at Liberty $3.5 million a year just in compliance with Sarbanes-Oxley. So I'm not gonna go do any more public companies. I may sell one of my companies into the public arena,
Yeah.
but I'm once it's public, I'm out of there. It's just too much of a nuisance.
So is that the big change you made with your now venture, loyalty brands? Is it something that,
Exactly. We
okay.
when we sat down and started Jackson Hewitt, I took two of my top people and we sat in a Mexican restaurant in Old
Okay.
Town San Diego,
Yep.
and came on a napkin, wrote top 10 things we're going to do different. And the first one I wrote is I'm going to have controlling shares.
Hmm.
We sold Liberty 20 years later and took the same two people, but now we were in Virginia Beach. We were traveling on that time. This time, so on the anniversary 20 years later of that meeting after leaving Jackson Hewitt, we went to a Mexican restaurant here in Virginia Beach, and wrote the top 10 things on a napkin. First thing was not going public again.
Yeah. It's funny hearing you say that you wrote it on a napkin, because I think, some people just overcomplicate things and have to have systems and these big fancy tools. And I mean, you're proof that sitting down and having a meeting and writing it on a napkin can still do a lot of damage in a good way.
You don't have to have a system until you have something to systemize.
Yeah. So I'm curious with having these large companies, how have you created a culture well, how have you created a culture within all of your companies that fostered growth for all of your team members?
I do a webinar once a week, and my webinar 2 weeks ago, Thursday, 12 days ago, was on creating a culture.
Mhm.
I do it to mentor, and one of my ex-franchisees who's building a company has about 8 or 9 employees. He said, how did you build, number one is, how did you build the culture at Liberty, that great culture, and how did you maintain it? And so it took me, Andy, it took me about 50 minutes, 50, it took me 50 minutes to go through why you should have a culture and how to do it. So when I assume I don't have 50 minutes right now.
Yeah.
So I'm going to give you the short answer.
Okay.
The short answer is to and Herb Kelleher said it well. He's one of the founders of Southwest Airlines.
Mhm.
He said, and I grew up thinking customers number one, customers number one, customers number one. And back at Jackson Hewitt, our mission statement was winning customers for life.
Mhm.
So, I mean, but Herb Kelleher, right after we came up with that mission statement a couple of years later, his book came out and said, no, no, no. If you want your customers to be treated as number one, you have to treat your staff as number one. And so it's doing what's best for everyone, doing what's best for your staff. And that creates the culture. The reason we call it loyalty brands is I have so many people loyal to me that are with me. I have one 54-year guy, two 35-year people, 5 25-year, 5 20-year people. I mean, and there's only one way to get loyalty, and that's to give loyalty. So it starts with giving loyalty and wanting what's best for every human being. That's the way you develop and keep a culture. But again, if you want, if your listeners, you can find it on loyaltybrands.com on why you should have culture and how to keep it once you have it. And great
Yeah.
companies have culture. There aren't too many great companies in the United States. Whenever I do a seminar, or sometimes with 50, 100 people, I say, let's agree on how many companies are great national companies that we all can agree on. And there's never more than 5.
Yeah.
And the ones that come up are Starbucks sometimes, and Disney, and but there's few that everyone agrees on.
And do you think that's because most companies are focused on revenue growth, the customer, and then they don't do as well for their team members.
Most companies are um, most interested in the bottom line
Hmm.
and not people.
Yeah, that's a good one. I mean, I actually had a guest on my show a couple years ago who talked about something similar and having he had made the mistake early on in his business where he was just driving hard to his team that they need to produce results and had customer focused goals. And then he started, I don't remember the exact story, but basically started losing business. It started going backwards. And I don't remember why, but he recognized that his problem was he didn't take care of his team. And as soon as he shifted that mindset, his company started just rapidly growing. And the the work, the feeling of being in that environment was just far better than before because now they cared
So
about their jobs. And
the key to my success is happy, successful employees and happy, successful franchisees. That's
mhm,
it. Those are the key words.
yeah,
Happy, successful employees and franchisees.
yeah. So, with you coming from the world of franchising, what are some pros as well as cons of franchising a company versus owning a traditionally, owner operated business?
How much time do I have? So, so let me say this: that you have to be careful when you get a franchise because most franchisors fail
Hmm.
in this country. Let me give you a quiz. Probably you're not quizzed that often, but Andy, but
Okay.
there are 4,000 franchisors in the International Franchise Association, and to be in the top 50% of how many number of locations do you have to be in the top 2,000 franchisors in this country?
How many locations do you have to have?
Yeah,
Mm, minimum of 10.
20.
Okay.
Now remember, McDonald's has 70,000
Yeah.
and Subway has 55,000 and 7-Eleven has 88,000 and I had 6,000 at Jackson Hewitt and 4,000 at Liberty. But most franchisors fail. So you got to be really, really careful. But so one is make sure the key is, do they have happy, successful franchisees?
Hmm.
That's the key. And they're required, every franchisor is required to give you the name and phone number of every existing franchise and everyone that left. So
Okay.
you do your due diligence, make sure if they don't have happy, successful franchisees, you're not going to be happy and successful. So that's the key in picking a good franchise. But there's also a myth that, it's cheaper to start on my own.
Hmm.
I mean, why do I have to pay a franchise fee and an ongoing royalty? Why do I have to do that? It's cheap. I can go out and save $50,000 and do it on my own. Well, the problem is when you build a business, it costs time and money. And it's when you get a great franchise system, like Zoom and Grumman, our franchise, or ATAX, our franchise, or McDonald's, or any great franchise chain. You get a system of doing business that's going to take you years and lots of tens and thousands of dollars to develop. You're going to be years behind if you wait and don't join a great system. So it's cheaper and quicker to success if you acquire a great brand. But on the other hand, you got to be careful
Hmm.
because most franchisors fail.
And so the key would be to do your due diligence with other franchisees.
Exactly.
Are there any
Go
other
through that list,
signs?
call them, and make sure they're not just happy. I've had franchisees that are happy and losing money.
Hmm.
So they have to meet both those words. They have to be happy and successful. They have to have successful to me means I've invested time and money and got a satisfactory return on my investment.
Okay. If you had a young business owner in front of you asking what they should do to become successful in business, what advice would you give them?
Wow. Um, If I have someone that hadn't started yet,
Yeah,
I would
brand new.
say, find something you love to do, work hard, persevere. The number one quality of success in anything, whether it's a sport, whether it's a relationship, a personal relationship, whether it's a business, the number one quality is perseverance. Nothing worthwhile comes without hard work. You have to work hard. And Andy, life's too short. On Monday morning, if you're going to work and you're not looking forward to it, you're going to the wrong place, right? To
Yep.
me, it's if you believe, thank God it's Friday, you're in the wrong place. Because to me, I love what I've done for 55 years. I love what I do.
Yeah.
And Monday's a great day because the rest of the people are coming to work. I'm working 365, but the rest
Yeah.
of the people are coming to work, and more things happen on Monday than Saturday, right? So
Right.
it's a so yeah, find something you love to do, work hard, persevere.
It's something I talk about a lot on my show, just bringing up my past, but I used to be a mechanic for heavy equipment, hydraulics and all that. And I did it for quite a few. I did it for, it was almost 10 years, but there was more days than not, I would come in, I would ask myself, is this something I see myself doing the next 5, 10, 15 years down the road? And the answer was always no. And I was not happy doing it. And then you become even more discontent the longer that goes on, because now you're thinking about like, why am I wasting time doing something I hate?
Right.
And but the key was to actually just take the risk, have a plan, take the risk, and then execute on it.
It's often riskier to do nothing
Yeah.
than to make a change.
Yeah.
And people fear the change and the pain of change. But the biggest risk usually is just same old, same old. If you do what you always did, you get what you always got.
Yeah.
If you're not happy and excited and looking forward to Monday, you're crazy. Life's way, way too short.
Yeah. So I got just a couple more questions for you. This one I've been asking every guest that comes on the show because it's been such a big topic over the last year and a half, 2 years. But what are your thoughts on AI, and how do you think it has affected business owners and entrepreneurs currently, and how do you think it will affect them in the future?
Um, I'm a bit ambivalent on AI. It's the talk of the town.
Hmm.
One of the stocks I watch is the biggest AI company, NVIDIA,
Yeah.
and it's gone crazy. It's tripled in the last 6 months and 9 months, and everyone's talking about it, and everyone's impressed by what it can do. But I've never seen anyone monetize it. I've never seen anyone improve their profits or turn a profit with it. So I'm um, I'm keeping an eye on it.
Yeah.
I'm watching it. I'm looking at others test it, but I do not see a useful, significant monetization for the companies in my industries.
Yeah.
And I haven't seen anyone roll it out and say, look at our profits are skyrocketing. Our profits are 20% higher because we invoked AI. No one is monetizing it yet. So I'm not convinced
Hmm.
that it's going to make a major change. Now, it could, and I'm watching it and waiting for it, and I'll be jumping on that bandwagon if I see it working.
Yeah.
But no, I'm not a fan.
Okay. I like it. That's why I like asking everybody this question, because I get such a variety of answers, and everything from both extremes to middle of the road to just, it is what it is. So, all right, one last question before we wrap up. If you could leave listeners with one actionable item that would have a positive impact on them today, what would it be and why?
Um, you have to be constantly improving. You have to be constantly improving, and my I'm 70. I'm almost 75 years old. In a few weeks, I'll be 75 years old. I'm still improving. I'm still learning. I'm
Yeah.
still, and it's a lot easier to learn if you embrace criticism. if you listen to everyone, Andy, if you're a smart guy, if you and I have a disagreement, then I've learned that I'm never going to be 100% right, and
Hmm.
you're not going to be 100% right. The answer is somewhere in between.
Right.
But if you're going to improve, you improve from being introduced to others that can help you. So I have a reading list. I would say the most important author to read. I mean, I have individual books, but I love Dale Carnegie anything. So
Hmm.
I would say read Dale Carnegie or take a Dale Carnegie course. And I've sent hundreds of people to Dale Carnegie course, and everyone improved. Everyone improved.
Okay. Awesome. John, it's been a pleasure having you on today, and I appreciate you taking the time because I know you're a busy guy. So I think this is a ton of value for everyone listening. So thank you again.
Andy, it's my pleasure. Hopefully we can
Absolutely.
do it again sometime.
Yeah, definitely. I just want to thank all of you guys too, everyone who's listening today. If you enjoyed the show and you felt like it provided you value, I'd love to hear what stuck out the most to you in the comments. So leave us a message and we'll see you on the next one.